Hello and welcome back to the Souls Sisters podcast. It is so lovely to see you back here. As always, I have so much gratitude for you tuning in and showing up to listen to these podcasts. I hope that you get a lot of value from them. So, today's intention of the podcast is to educate and inspire and allow you to take aligned action. So, what I'm going to be covering today is actually in and around a talk I proudly got to go to at an event at a women's networking event, and we touched on the menstrual cycle, menopause, perimenopause, coping with these symptoms, and lifestyle changes that we can do to help us cope with these changes. So, if you're someone who is having a regular period, or maybe you are coming into the perimenopause stage of your life, or maybe you've already went through perimenopause and you're now in the stage of menopause, this is the podcast for you. Any lifestyle considerations that we can do, how to cope with these symptoms, and really just break the stigma on it, which would be the biggest thing. And get your journal, your notepad, your notes ready, because this is going to be a big podcast and I feel like it's really due. So I firstly want to start this with asking, who remembers, do you remember the period chat in school, right? Because I really want you to sit now and think about the period chat that you got in school and really see how you felt in your body around it. Maybe in your own home environment, how did you feel around the period chat as well? And how was it brought up? Because for me in school, it was like I went to an all girls school. And it was this woman standing on stage, holding a pad and just telling us how frequent to change these pads, and basically don't have sex because you'll fall pregnant. And that was it. That was it. And I remember just walking away, almost embarrassed to ever talk about it again. I remember in school, if we were in PE and we had swimming, that I would be nervous to tell the teacher that I'm on my period. I would literally write a note and show her it, being petrified, to even bring up the conversation. So what I'm really getting at is that how you first experience your periods and how it has been first communicated with you is how likely comfortable, confident that you will feel talking about it today. Statistics show that women who hadn't been brought up in a positive way of talking about hormone health are embarrassed and don't talk about it, not in everyday life. And let's be honest, periods, perimenopause, menopause, it's all the cycles, it's all women's health, and it's about time that we give it a voice and we break the stigma on it. So really understand your first experience, and understand that just because your first experience doesn't mean that is the way that we're going to move forward with it, okay? So to understand perimenopause, to understand menopause, I think it's vitally important to understand your menstrual cycle first, because that's where it starts. And also, if you're not someone in perimenopausal age or going through that, I still think it's very important for you to understand it, because it will probably last about 7 to 10 years of our lives, which is quite a long time. And the better informed we are now, the better we can already start putting these lifestyle changes in today, so that we're not getting to that stage of life and trying to fix our whole life, okay? So firstly, let's talk about the menstrual cycle, right? So I'm going to go off a 28-day cycle. Now, statistics say that actually it's very uncommon for people to have a 28-day cycle, but anywhere between 28 to 35 is considered normal. Anything longer than that isn't, okay? So your period starts on day 1 of that red blood bleed. And that is day 1 of your cycle, the day of the red blood bleed. Then we go through a phase called our follicular phase. Think F first. Then on in around day 14, we hit our ovulation. Now, as again, every woman is so different. it may not be day 14 for you. Then after we ovulate, we then move into our luteal phase, okay? So think L last. So that's day 1 to day 28. And then we have obviously our period as well, our menstruation. So what happens throughout this is, firstly, on the day 1 of our period, this is where our hormones are at the lowest, okay? That is why you may feel like that low dip, serotonin's quite low, and you just don't feel like a high vibe tribe. That is completely normal, but not doing anything about that, like not, for example, not moving at all, not going out for a walk, not doing sunlight movement, will actually make your symptoms worse, because we want to get the blood flowing, okay? So in around day 3, estrogen will start to rise. Now, I'm going to talk about 2 lovely sex hormones, estrogen and progesterone, right? The first one I'll be talking about is estrogen. Estrogen will start to rise on day 3 of your period, right? And then estrogen is like your Beyonce hormone. So she's like that friend that she is always outgoing, she's so bubbly. That's when you're like, woo, I'm starting to feel like myself again. Your period, like, you know, when you get 3 days after your period, you're like, oh, thank fuck, I started to feel human again. Oh my God, amazing. Who was that 3 days ago, right? But if we have too much estrogen, like excess estrogen, she'll cause things like sore boobies, she'll cause things like acne, and she's just annoying when she's around too much, okay? And how we get rid of estrogen and excess estrogen is through sweating, is through pooing, and through eating green leafy vegetables as well, okay? And carrot is also a really good one to take away excess estrogen. So then we move into so that is our period. Then we move into our follicular phase, okay, which will last from day 1 to day 14. When we move into ovulation, when ovulation occurs in and around day 14, what actually happens here is that this is when our hormones are usually at the highest. This is when we're feeling that high vibe tribe. This is when you plan that date. This is when you push in the gym. This is when you feel absolutely fantastic. There are them weeks that you're like, you know what? I'm going to sort out my whole life. I'm going to sort out my wardrobe. I'm going to change my job. I'm going to sort out, you know, ever have them sort your life out weeks? That is that week, okay? That's usually the main time to sign up for things. You'll feel most motivated, even though I hate that word. But that is usually the times when you're the most high vibe tribe. And testosterone is also at the highest at that point, which is the male dominant hormone, but that is the only time that will be as high in a female body. And that's also why you get that buzz, that go, that do attitude, okay? Then after day 14, we move into our late luteal phase. And when we ovulate, we then make progesterone. Okay, and progesterone is absolutely amazing. And progesterone is our hormone for keeping pregnancy, for anti-anxiety, and we just want as much, like, see, if progesterone was a perfume, I would want to wear it every single day of my life. Like, I want all of that. Like, I want as much of that shit as I possibly can get. Okay? So progesterone is the dominant hormone in that late luteal phase. So that is why when it comes into that 5 days, 3 days of your period and you're feeling like a bag, God, I actually feel like I'm cursing quite a lot on this podcast, but this is when you feel like a bag of shit, right? I'm just going to be so honest, like, let's embrace the authenticity. You feel like shit, right? And this is exact words I would say to my clients, so I have no sugarcoating here. You feel like shit, right? But the reason you're starting to feel like shit in between that day, like that 5 days before your period and that 3 days before, is because your progesterone is either not there, there's not much left, or there's very, very little. So we want to save as much progesterone as possible. And how we do that is through our nutrition, is through our stress management practice. Think of progesterone as like a bag of popcorn, right? And each wee piece of popcorn is this little piece of progesterone. Every time you encounter coffee on an empty stomach, every time you encounter stressful times when you didn't meditate after to let it go, then you encounter a stressful training session, then you don't feed yourself for 6 hours, then your boss sends you a shit email, then you're nearly in a car accident. Like, this is without other stressors of financial stress, family stress, relationship stress, kids stress. You get the point. As in, like, we want to manage our stress as much as possible so that we can have the best late luteal phase as possible, okay? So that is day 1 to day 28. Now, people do mention obviously around like, oh, you shouldn't be lifting weights around certain like things of your period and whatnot. And what I'm actually just going to say on that is you listen to your own body. Me personally, my own personal thing is what I do is when I'm in that ovulation phase, that from day 7 to day 22, that is when I'll do the majority of my weight sessions. So then weeks, I will do 4 weight sessions a week and 1 cardio because I can push. I know that I can push myself, and they're the weeks that I absolutely hammer because I have the energy. The weeks that I'm leading up to my period, the 2 days before, I do 3 training sessions a week and I do 1 cardio. Okay. Even some weeks in my like ovulation phase, like I'll be training maybe 6 days a week, but that's because I know that my body can handle that. People are like, oh, you shouldn't be lifting weights. In fact, it is actually fine to lift weights. It's not like it's going to be the be and end all. Like if you lift a few weights, but what you can do, you'll just notice that you're not as strong. Movement is always key, regardless. Is it a yoga session? If it's a light jog, if it's a boxing session, something to move your body, okay? And there's ways that you can track your period and track your cycle, which would be through apps like Flow, Clue. I use my Garmin, like just, like my Garmin watch. And on that, a really good point would be to track your workout as well. If you're going to the gym and you're just lifting random weights every time that you go, you're going to get random results. And you will notice when you start to log your weights and say like a log book, like a workout book, that the weeks when you're ovulating and versus the weeks that maybe the 5 days before your period, how much stronger that you will be. So it's not to compare yourself week on week, but rather to compare yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually in the gym, week on week of your cycle, not week to week. So something for me is that I compare myself to how much anxiety I actually have when I'm on my period, how well I cope with situations, because usually the days coming up to my period, my inner critic comes out, and it's how I handle them situations as I want to get better at, and that's how I compare myself. Is that, am I getting better when I'm on my period with dealing with criticism or negative feedback, or am I even ethos of life? So that's one thing that I highly recommend that you do is never compare yourself week on week as a woman. That compare yourself week to week to where you are in your cycle. So on that, since we've went over our period and over our menstrual cycle, now we're going to move into perimenopause. Now, I don't know about yous, and I didn't know that like perimenopause was a thing, right? So I just thought like, oh, you have your period and the next one, like you're in menopause and that's it, right? But and I think this is a common thing as well. So perimenopause is actually the transition period leading up to the menopause, and changes are going to be between your hormones, between the regular, like how often that your cycle comes, and any hormone functions as well. So the symptoms of perimenopause is irregular periods, changes in length, missed periods, heavier periods, lighter periods, hot flushes, night sweats, mood changes, increased anxiety and depression, irritability, sleep disruption, and vaginal dryness as well, but that's because of the decrease in estrogen, okay? So then what is menopause if you're saying that this perimenopause is a transition? So what menopause actually is 12 months without a period at all. So that is the ending of reproductive years. So that perimenopause phase, the regular, the irregular cycles, the night sweats, all of this here can last between 1 to 10 years. Like, girls, women, whoever's listening, that is a very long time. So instead of feeling powerless around this, how can we be empowered and use this to our benefit and actually cope with these lifestyle changes? Because they're coming. We can't change that, but it's accepting that. And it's also being empowered with this information, because there's no point knowing the knowledge. What actually changes you is implementation. So the first thing that we're going to cover is stress management in all areas of life. In all areas of life, to increase your progesterone if you're someone looking to conceive a baby, and maybe you're constantly low in progesterone. If you're someone who's constantly riddled with anxiety, maybe you have endo. Maybe you're someone who's in the perimenopause at the moment and you want to have a smooth transition, you want to learn how to cope with this. Stress management, self-care, whatever you want to fucking call it, it is for all areas of life. And if there's one thing, that I'm going to go through quite a few things here, but if there's one thing that you take from this, please take this one. And if I still see people doing this, this is one, like, this is my, like, Bible that I will live by. And if you take one thing from this call, or this podcast, is to do this. Get off your fucking phone the last hour before bed. Get off your fucking phone. I don't give a fuck if you're like, why are you on your phone the last hour before bed? Like, I put my hands up and I will say I was no spring chicken. I used to do this all of the time. Then the group chat would go mad. Someone would send you a Snapchat. Someone would text you. Something would happen. And you would be on your phone. Next of all, it's 11 o'clock. And then you're like, next of all, it's 1. Next of all, you wake up in the morning. You're exhausted. You're reaching for coffee. You live the same vicious cycle, right? Not only to that, the last 5 minutes before you go to bed is when you start tapping into your subconscious mind. So that is when you are primed to reprogram your brain, right? But you're looking at TikTok, messages, reoccurring emotions, therefore you're living the same life. When you start to study brain chemistry and quantum physics and listen to all of Joe Dispenza's stuff, and you start to implement it and notice the change in your life, and notice how you wake up in the morning not feeling like you're behind, knowing that you are enough, by just that one thing of not looking at your phone an hour before bed. Incredible. Okay, that's just to do with obviously the subconscious mind. When you actually are on your phone before bed, regardless if you're like, oh well, I can still go to sleep, it actually affects your quality of sleep. So it's always quality over quantity with sleep. And you can be like, oh yeah, but you want to be actually getting a deep sleep so your body can actually rest. Sleep is the time where your body has a mental cleanse. When when it actually just turns off and it can cleanse itself. And it will send signals to your brain that it genuinely thinks it's morning. Like, you aren't, I've heard people be like, oh, well, I've on my phone and like I'd still fell asleep 20 minutes later. That's okay. You still fell asleep 20 minutes later, but you were still putting negative thoughts into your brain just before you were sleeping. Like, where your subconscious is so open 5 minutes before you fall asleep and you're on your phone stalking your ex-boyfriend. Like, no, stop doing that. We're better than this, girls. We're going to be empowered, not powerless, by putting your phone away an hour before bed. I actually can feel so much passion about that. That is just one thing that I'm like, if there's one thing that you take from me, take that. Just take it. And replace it with more positive and uplifting things, okay? Which I'll get into after this. The next thing is walking. Walking is free. Not just walking because, I have to hit my 10k steps a day, but walking because you want to clear your head. Walking because nature is the natural flow of life. Walking because it's free to clear your head. And people think, well, if I don't hit 10k, well then the day's a failure. It's not. You just need to be doing 2 more over what you're currently doing. 2k over what you're currently doing is more than enough. Okay? So instead of going on your phone the hour before bed, well, what can I do? Well, you can start journaling, and there's no right or wrong way to do journaling. And here are some journal questions that you can write down if you want. Is that, how have I shown kindness to myself today? Or how did I show kindness to someone else? Now, what you're going to see is what I'm going to do here is I'm going to these questions are going to actually elevate your mood. And it's going to show gratitude, it's going to show love, it's going to show kindness. You see how we do this? Before we go to bed, rather than being on our phone, this is the shit that you start to attract into your life, because you're considering all of the good things that you've done for the day. Maybe you're realizing that you didn't and you're going to do it tomorrow, rather than constantly being in a lack mindset. So what are 3 things I'm grateful for and why? You notice how this is not a lack mindset by looking at your phone and in this constant unworthiness and comparison. And I don't care if you're like, oh, I don't really compare. You do. You actually, as humans, you do. You're always comparing. It's not a bad thing. It's just a natural thing, because we're like, is this cunt going, like, our bodies still think like, is this cunt going to kill me? Or what's the crack here? When really what it is, we're just comparing if it's like Do I need a fight or not? But we still do that because we're like, evolution hasn't, like, you know, we can't take that out of us. So that is what we're constantly comparing at. So we're in a fear, lack mindset. So let's elevate our mindset through elevated emotions. What am I grateful for? Why? And the biggest thing, why am I grateful for this? Really understanding the why. Okay? Who am I thankful for and why? What do I love most about myself and why? How have I shown kindness today? Or how have I received kindness today? How can I incorporate more mindful practices into my routine? And what signs and synchronicities have I seen today or noticed? For me, everything that I'm seeing at the moment is 777, 111, 555. Oh, there's a white butterfly outside. White butterfly. Like, I can't believe that just happened when I was talking about that. White butterflies, like, really fucking noticing, okay? Getting off your phone, because gratitude literally changes everything. And other ways that you can manage your stress is by planning your day, planning your when you're getting your gym sessions in, planning what you're doing for your dinner, taking less decisions out there. Yes, you can be in your flow all you want, which is fabulous. But again, we do need to have some sort of structure in there, because at the end of the day, if we don't plan things, it doesn't get done. The most simplest thing, if you take from this, another unreal one, is grounding. Like taking your socks off, getting your feet into the grass. You will connect with Earth's natural electrons, which elevates our emotions, which allows us to connect into the general flow of life. And going through a bit of a spiritual awakening is what we'll put it down to, is that, well, when I just said that, a black butterfly just flew up there. What is the odds in this happening? I wish you could see this happening, because I have this facing the window, because I like looking up, and when I'm looking at the camera, I look at the grass. And anyway, I'm off on a tangent, but this is why I'm explaining why I do this, because I've got ever more into romanticizing my life, buying myself flowers, because I want someone to buy me flowers, but I'll start doing that myself. I'll start showing myself the love that I want to receive. And one of them things when I started buying my flowers for myself was that you buy these big, beautiful bunch of flowers, you come home, you look after them, but eventually the leaves will fall away, eventually the leaves will die, and eventually you'll have to throw the flowers out. The same with a tree, same with the trees. Have you ever seen a tree? Well, I was going to say, obviously, there's not all trees shed, but trees shed their leaves. And when you think things are falling apart, they're actually coming together. And we are connected to nature. And just having that philosophy of, you know, nature has these cycles of like the shedding away, the regrowing again, and that is our life. That it's not uncommon for things to get let go. It's not uncommon for change, but it's our resistance to change that really is the biggest issue. It's not the thing, it's the thinking about the thing. And then the last one is cold showers. Unreal. Turn on the shower cold in the morning. We absolutely live, laugh, love that. So I'm just gonna, did have other things to, I had notes on other things that I was going to say, but I just feel like this is now the time to end the podcast. And just what I want is to sit with things that I have said about no phone first hour, no phone first and last hour, taking a cold shower, grounding yourself in nature, planning your day, going out for a walk, eating whole nutritious dense foods, putting boundaries in place, taking yourself for a training session. Like, sometimes training is just not always for looking aesthetically nice. Obviously, that's a benefit. But if you're a woman and you're coming into perimenopause age, now we're all going to be approaching that age at some point, or we're all going to go through that. We'll actually start to decrease in bone density, and how we're actually going to increase our bones by having stronger bones is through weight training. How many women do you know who have fell at a certain age and broke a hip, and that has been the end of that? Because that is absolutely not how I want to go. If I knew that I could have stopped that, or else had a stronger body, if I just would have, wee butterfly, black butterfly. If I just would have stopped with the excuses of not getting myself to a training session. Now, that doesn't mean you have to go for 2 hours 4 times a week. It could be half an hour of lifting a few weights. Doing something for your future self today. So, yeah, I hope that you have all been keeping well. And I hope that you've got some value out of this podcast. There was actually a lot there with nighttime routines, perimenopause. This is very heavy science one, I'll say. But if there's one thing that you do going forward, know that you've now got the knowledge, but application is queen. And I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.